Hi guys, so this is going to be a quick intro to writing in AP style, which is a style that you write in whenever you're doing any kind of journalism. All right, so we're going to cover four main points. What is AP style, why use it, the basics, and common mistakes. And then after we cover all of this stuff, you guys will have a couple of activities and assignments in the classroom that you guys will have to go through. All right, so AP style is a form of writing that most journalists in our country and other people who put out any kind of news use, and they're published in a book which is updated. And it's just really important to follow these rules because so that there can be a standard way of doing things. And by standard, I'll get a little bit more into those details here in a second. All right, the reason why people use it is so that they can um, have some consistency when it comes to any kind of news article and things like that. So the basics. When you are writing about an age in an article, you want to make sure that you use numerals. So that means that you're going to actually use the numbers whenever you're writing about an age instead of spelling out the number. So for example, an 18-year-old student, you use the numbers 1-8 instead of writing out the word 18. So this is pretty self-explanatory. Okay, titles. So you're not going to italicize magazine or newspaper titles, you're just going to capitalize them. And this is a little bit different from styles like APA and MLA, which you might learn about when you're doing things like research in an English class. You want to use quotation marks for the titles of books, video games, movies, TV shows, works of art, speeches, and song titles. And some examples are below. So for example, my favorite book is Fahrenheit 51, is in quotation marks. Dates are written as numerals. TH is not used. Some months are abbreviated, and months without dates are not abbreviated. So for example, if you are writing out a date, let's say for example today is January 19th, you're not going to put the TH on 19th, you're just going to write January 19. As you can see, the months that are abbreviated in the little table below, those are the months that you will abbreviate when you're writing in an article. And that's basically just because those months are a little bit longer, so it's just a little bit easier and more economical to shorten up those months that have longer names. Here's just some more examples. So as you can see in the example up on top, the board meeting took place on November 14th. So that November is abbreviated with a period, and the 14 is just left as it is instead of writing that TH that we sometimes see. And there are a couple more examples down below. Days of the week, you capitalize but don't abbreviate. So for example, Friday, the concert is on Friday, November 18th. You spell out Friday and you capitalize the F. Always capitalize your days and don't abbreviate them. Monetary units greater than $1. So numerals again are the actual numbers. Instead of writing out, for example, like the number 3, THREE, you just write the number 3. And so on and so forth for any other numbers. For example, money if it's more than $1. If you're dealing with any kind of change, you're going to write out the word cents. I know that's kind of silly, but you indicate that cent instead of putting the symbol for cents. All right, names. Names are super important. So when you're mentioning a person for the first time, you always use their first and last name. And then from then on, you want to use only their last name. Don't use courtesy titles, which means Mr., Mrs., so on and so forth. You're not really trying to be polite. So you just keep it straightforward and use only their name, unless it's part of a quote. So if a person is talking about another person and they call a person by Mr. or Mrs., then you want to make sure that you quote them exactly as it states. All right. Numbers. So we already talked a little bit about numbers, but numbers 1 through 9 are spelled out. And then once we get to numbers 10 and above, we write them as actual numerals. So the 3 teenagers applied for summer jobs at 12 stores. So this is a good example of the 2 rules. So we see that the word 3 is spelled out while the number 12 is written in numerals. Moving on. All right, you're never going to start a sentence with a numeral unless the sentence starts with a year. So for example, 3 baseball players were drafted. So we're starting off with a number and we want to make sure we spell that out. Ordinal numbers. Ordinal numbers are okay when describing the order in time or location. So you spell out 1st through 9th, and then you can write the numerals 10 and higher as a numeral. And in this case, you do add that TH. Percentages. Percentages are always written as numerals with the word percent written after. So for example, in this sentence it says enrollment at West Coast High School increased 3%. So it doesn't use the percent symbol, it uses the word percent. Punctuation. So your commas and periods are always going to go inside of the quotation marks. This is just standard quotation rules. And this is no different than anything else that you learn when it comes to using quotation marks. In a simple series, you're not going to use a comma before a conjunction. This is getting more into comma rules. So for example, she likes sushi, pizza, and tamales. Typically, after the word pizza, there would be another comma, but when you're writing in AP style, you actually leave out that second comma. And then you're only going to use a single space after a period, which is a little different because in some styles you are actually supposed to double space, but you don't have to worry about that too much unless you're familiar with the other styles like MLA and APA. States. If you're writing about a state and you're not mentioning the city, you're going to spell it out. If you include the city name and the state together, when you include the city name and the state together, the state needs to be abbreviated. So this is only for all states that are not Alaska, Hawaii, Idaho, Iowa, Maine, Ohio, Texas, and Utah. So it's kind of weird that those states specifically don't have those abbreviations. But other than that, you can always Google the abbreviation for the other states. Oh, these are the state abbreviations. I forgot that they were actually a part of this slide. So, for example, she came from Anaheim, California, and California is abbreviated a little bit differently, so we just cut it off after the F. In this next example, we see where it talks about Honolulu, Hawaii, and again, you don't abbreviate Hawaii. The last example, the earthquake was in California. So we've already seen an example of a sentence that uses California as an example state, but because it doesn't list the city too, it doesn't need to be abbreviated. All right, time. Adding the time of day is critical. So for example, you're going to use a colon to distinguish the hour from the minutes. And you don't want to use the colon and the double zero. So you spell out noon and midnight, and the examples are as shown below. 3 p.m., 1:35 p.m. All right, so we're going to go through just a couple of examples. Here's a couple of mistakes. So these are just kind of common things that happen when we're writing, even when we're speaking. So there's no S in the word toward. Same applies to the word upward, downward, forward, and backward. And this might seem like a really small detail, but when you're writing in a professional manner, especially to do some sort of journalistic reporting, you want to make sure that you stick to those rules pretty strictly because you want to show your professionalism and you want to show that you're reputable and you know what you're talking about. Avoid the use of the word here. Instead, you want to make sure that you're providing detailed location information. When referring to numbers, use more instead of over. So let's look at a couple of these. On Saturday, May 14th, the team celebrated its second place win in the tournament. So I'll give you a second to look at that and see if you can spot the errors. All right, so we see where Saturday should be spelled out, not abbreviated. We see where the TH in 14th should be left out, and second place should be written out. So SECOND is what it should say instead of the abbreviation. So we see the correct answer here. On Saturday, May 14th, the team celebrated its second place win in the tournament. And we see where Saturday is spelled out. There's no TH in 14th, and second is spelled out. So that's going to wrap up the style notes, but you guys will continue to practice some of these style strategies in your assignments. Good job, guys.